This is the Arkansas Traveler, played by John N. Silly.
Welcome, everyone. I'm the captain, Ross Memphis Pambrun. And with me is the co-host, Lawrence Gervais. We're broadcasting from Calgary in Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, which is part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We would also like to acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda, with whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. We would also like to say thank you to our First Nation friends, to the Métis settlements, and to our Métis brothers and sisters. I'd like to give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for the time she allows us to be here to share her bounty. And now, folks, from the President and the Captain, let's get the wheel squeaking. And Lawrence, after listening to our wonderful acknowledgement that we bring into the squeaky wheel, another week of conversation between the Captain and the President. Folks, we always enjoy you guys jumping on, taking the opportunity, taking the time. This is an exciting one, Lawrence, because we're actually going to be bringing in some wonderful guests who are having a strong relationship within the education community, and it ties very well into the student year and our connection with our community. So we're going to be talking with Rupert's Land and the success of their programs, their education programs. I know there's one thing we've been talking about this last few days, and it's, to me, the biggest names in the world, or the biggest names in companies and the biggest names out there. And it seems like, Lawrence, you probably want to jump into this part of the conversation right now, but let's talk Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
Give me your thoughts on that. I know you and Jason have talked about it a little bit. So let's share it with our listeners, because when you pointed it out the first time, I was ambivalent trying to figure out, how do you respond to this? But explain it to us.
Well, I mean, I have to attribute a lot of this to Adrian Pruden at Pentagon Freight, who sent me an email with this image of looked like a Métis flag to me when I seen it. But then when you look closely at it, there's a piece missing from the infinity symbol itself. Not only that, it's attached to a company in the States that Mark Cuban was promoting on LinkedIn. So I had put on there, a history of the flag and what that means. And even the actual blue color is the same. The only difference is this piece of chunk. And the company's name is Cultivate US, and they're promoting American born businesses and trying to encourage people to contribute to American, businesses. And I just think to myself, okay, well, that's a wonderful idea, I guess, a movement, but really using our flag as kind of the basis of that movement, or at least a part of it. And they're probably not even knowing. But I always think that some people, when, who are in marketing, always do this thing called reverse image search, right? And they can kind of find it very easily that, yes, the symbol, the Métis flag, which is a battle flag from 1816, really is at the heart and central nervous system of Canadian Métis, that it's probably not a good idea to use it. So I just, but they did. But it's interesting because the amount of people responding on my LinkedIn especially has been pretty tremendous from all over Canada and the States.
Well, and there's no shortage of numbers that follow you on LinkedIn. I guarantee everybody has looked at that image and said, wow, yeah, you put the two symbols up beside each other, and the only thing that's missing is just a little bit on that Cultivate one. It's like, well, yeah, I don't know how much has to be taken away before all of a sudden it doesn't represent the same. Even if the colors were different, I'd have a better argument to suggest it wasn't. But when I looked at it closely, I'm like, wow, yeah, that does seem pretty close.
Yeah, and Cultivate US, and it's a New York-based company, because I, did some looking into it. We have Métis in New York, and I know some of those people too, and I'm sure they would probably have concerns in seeing on a billboard or something when they're walking around the neighborhood or whatever, and seeing this their flag sitting there. So,
yeah. Well, I'm sure the short time will tell just how many more Métis people sort of react when they see that, because it is fun. And if anything, maybe it's not a terrible thing that it brings conversation across our community. Even if nothing does change, at least it's creating conversation We have something to look at, laugh at. Really no harm, it seems, happening when it comes to it. But we have to send a thank you to Mark Cuban. Wow, you've really brought a lot of attention to the Métis community. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hopefully he doesn't want any money from it, though. Now, let's talk a little bit about the upcoming vaccine. I mean, Calgary's working quite hard on developing a location downtown. I think it's going to be the convention center for vaccines, but we're still looking at regionally providing the vaccine for our citizens. Is it May?
Yes. Well, that's the anticipated clinic day will be in early May or mid-May. It all depends on when the new ages come out and the next, the phase, the 2D, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And here we are. We've bounced back and forth. We're back into phase 1, which really doesn't change the motion of the vaccinations for those people for as we monitor and try and get the age groups in there. But yeah, folks, when you have the opportunity, even Morgan Freeman says, if you don't believe, you don't have to believe everything Morgan Freeman says, but he believes the science and he believes in the vaccine. So
yeah, but that voice is really convincing though, right? So that's the tough
exactly.
part. Morgan Freeman, yeah.
We need to have that opportunity where our voices are as convincing as his. So folks, so please make sure that you take the opportunity, call 811, follow the websites, go to albertametis.com and you'll find out more information and follow us. And thank you for listening to the Squeaky Wheel. Every one of you who subscribes just lends more strength to us in our relationship with our partners. One of the other things, a fun thing I want to talk about today, Lawrence, was I sat in a presentation the other day about computers and artificial intelligence. Now, my company does machine learning. So that's a one small portion, or actually a very large portion, of how artificial intelligence works. But the gentleman who was giving the presentation, it was quite fun. He was pointing out something as simple as when you watch Netflix or you watch any of one of the streaming television or movie providers out there, when you look at the pictures for what you want to watch, and I've done it just the other day, I was looking at it, James Bond, for example. If you're to look at James Bond on my wife's profile, it's pictures of Daniel Craig and good looking, her eyes drawn to that. Whereas if you look at it on mine, all of a sudden it's not him. It's different. It's a bit more action kind of photos. So artificial intelligence is there to look at how your computer runs, how you process information, and then try and anticipate or machine learn what it is that's going to take you to interest you into their product. And it is everywhere. And now I don't use conventional social media the way most people do, but every single person, the first thing they say to me is, as soon as they have a conversation about anything, the next thing you know, Facebook is advertising it to them. Folks, that is artificial intelligence that is utilizing information to determine what you might be interested in purchasing, joining, being involved.
Well, I just want to make the comment that there's nothing artificial about my intelligence, just so you know. But if they can replicate, we need to measure that on what I know, yeah, you could solve the world problems, I'm sure.
I hope they take some of your DNA pretty soon, Lawrence, because we should clone you. Like, you think of just that intelligence. Folks, if we put 4 Lawrences in a room, I'd be curious to see whether or not they'd be able to find their way out the door. Yeah, that might be. I think I turned that one around on you pretty quickly. Stampede.
Yep.
I know we all want it to happen. It's funny.
I thought you had some great news for us.
I wish. So the funny thing is the world and the connections that I do know of and such, they are politely guarded, but positive, saying, we really want this to go forward. We really want to figure out the numbers to connect. We're Calgarians. We want to, continue to look at this positively, like we're in the right direction. And I understand, right? The province is throwing new, not roadblocks. These are necessary roadblocks, but boy, it's interesting how if you put out anything positive, if anybody in the Stampede says, yes, we're trying to move towards having a way that we can have a Stampede this year, immediately people are like, there's a Stampede going on. Start buying your tickets. Get ready to get down there and get your cowboy boots out. Folks, when we're saying we're moving and trying to build and hopefully planning, it's not 100%. But you hear this and you hear the reaction. And in a way, it's almost harder, because then you got to go back and say, well, nobody ever said this was 100%. This was wanting to move positively towards this because we all want it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the people probably wishing it that Stampede happens and probably yelling it out. Go buy boots, and it's probably Lamley's, right?
Could be.
And but I do all my shopping at Irvine, so. But yeah, I hope it is. I mean, I listened to Mayor Nenchi's outgoing speech the other day and he did talk about Stampede and how they're still negotiating and still talking about it and it's still on the table. Nothing's been decided yet. And we know it has to come very, very soon, right? So I anticipate maybe at the end of the month, there's going to be a significant announcement, or at least May for sure.
Oh, I think so, because all of the volunteers and the staff there, they got to try and figure it out themselves too. How do you very quickly put together a program that was hopefully going to allow, even if it was half as many, 50,000 people through the turnstiles? How do you create that? So yeah, hopefully we can give them some time.
Plus also it's the vaccination scheduling. That's the main issue. Because by September, if they had it then, it would be fine.
How about this? When you buy your ticket to the Chucks, you get a vaccination on the way in, if you haven't had it done. I'm just an ideas person, Lawrence. You and I usually throw around bad ideas, but maybe this is the right one. Or you can't get on the zipper so you get vaccinated in the line, because sometimes that could be a long line, or the mini donut line. Then you can get on the zipper. That terrifying ride. Maybe we're combining.
Show home. I mean, how are you going to see the show home with all those people standing in line waiting to get in there? And
so you get vaccinated before you go through the show home. Maybe we've come up with a new idea. Maybe this is the best idea. Lawrence, I think it's time that we're going to be jumping on to bring on our guests. But I just want to talk a little bit about, because you're familiar with it, but I've got some of the numbers here. Métis Education Foundation was created in 1991. It was a M&A charitable nonprofit foundation improving the lives and education for Métis citizens. Founded, and it was usual governance, I would suggest. You now sitting on the board. Rupert's Land Institution was granted administrative oversight in 2006. And it is quite unique in the fact that here we are creating educational opportunities for virtually any age, and now through any part of your time in post-secondary education. Large partnerships with the government of Alberta, labor market development, $30 million with 17 post-secondary partners in Alberta. Phenomenal. I mean, we're talking Red Deer College, the universities, Olds College. There's 2 endowments that are being held, many opportunities. And I know our 2 guests today, Mr. Austin Bercier and Grace Weber, both going to the U of C. So if you're ready for this, Lawrence, let's bring our guests on to the Squeaky Wheel. And Lawrence, here's the exciting part of our show where we get to bring our guests into the Squeaky Wheel. With us today is Grace Weber and our kind gentleman up there, Austin Bercier. Now, I hope I said that right, you two. Since both of you guys are in school, the pronunciation is probably better in the case of how you guys do it, but we're incredibly excited. We've had a strong relationship over the last few years with Rupert's Land. They sponsor 17 different educational institutions. Endowments of millions of dollars are being managed. A strong relationship. I know you guys have a bit of familiarity with this because your connection with Rupert's Land and the information that gets shared. For our listeners we've had Lisa Cruikshank on, who's one of their directors of the education. Here we now have a unique chance to finally share with our audience members where some of that success is going, where some of the engagement is at. And I hope you two are comfortable jumping on the squeaky wheel here with my very good friend and the co-host, Mr. Lawrence Gervais, the president, and we in conversations and our information that we've shared back and forth. I'm Ross, Memphis, Pambrun. So let's bring you two into the squeaky wheel conversation. Now, Grace, because I threw your name out first, I think I'd be keen to know the direction of where your education is at, where it's headed, and if you're comfortable with it, and I think you are based on your association with Rupert's Land. We all have a journey that we're making through the Métis connection, through our family. Maybe let's talk a little bit about those two things. And welcome to the show.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. You've already introduced me. I'm Grace Weber. I'm in my second year at the University of Calgary, and I'm looking at doing a major of anthropology with a Bachelor of Arts. So with that, I'm just, people and how cultures work and change over years. So I think I really went in that direction, maybe because of the Métis connection I have, just looking into how we're formed and how we can strengthen our community and, really get a national understanding of where we're all going.
It's unique. And Lawrence and I have this conversation a lot that here we have it's a cultural study saying we started right here. Yeah, this is the time when the genealogy and that study happens. This is the time where we all, could start the clock. And I know that anthropologists definitely are interested in studying that and the genomes study of the aspect of how our health develops from there. We actually get to monitor that. So where in the family relationships and the connection with your family, or who was part of your journey that said, listen, you are Métis, or, in the opportunity to connect with the Métis?
Sure. Yeah. I think my grandfather definitely was a big influence. I think the generation before him was not very invested in the culture, didn't claim any citizenship. So he kind of set that ball rolling, and then all his kids followed suit. And so my dad and then my mom, who is not Métis herself, but really contributed to, let's educate these kids and let's get them out to events and let's take them to Batoche, let's take them to Red River. So I think very hands-on learning approach from my family, trying to say, we can re-immerse ourselves and we can get back in there.
And Lawrence and my dad are musicians, and we've learned from a long time that awareness, that age, the older generations, they were often, asked to hide it or were encouraged to hide it. And now we're starting to see it. Austin, how about yourself? Is it the same kind of a journey? It's not uncommon, but how did where your connection with Métis, and how is it? Has it any relationship with what you're studying?
Thanks for inviting me on the show. And I'll start with my education, then I'll loop back to answer your question. So I'm in my fourth year of mechanical engineering and commerce. It's a combined degree program. It's 5 years long. I kind of grew up in a small community called Chestermere, just outside of Calgary, actually. Very small high school. The same 30 students I went to kindergarten with are the same 30 students I graduated grade 12 in. And to be honest, I was the only Indigenous student that I knew of in that school. So, to loop back to your question, I was very, very sheltered from that side of my heritage. It was my dad's side. And when we were younger, we all got our Métis cards from the Métis Nation Alberta. But, past that, like I said, been very sheltered from that side of my heritage.
And are there opportunities within your schooling agencies? I know, like University of Calgary has developed an Indigenous. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Lawrence, what's the name of those? SAIT has it. They're the Indigenous.
The advisory.
Advisory boards, as well as the rooms where you can go and connect with other Indigenous students. And it's
the drop-in centers,
the welcome centers.
Yeah, ours is the Writing Symbols Lodge.
Yeah.
at the U of C there. Yeah.
And I know I've been there. I've been invited to a number of opportunities when it comes to speakers, and yeah, of course, having not gone to U of C as it was, the trying to navigate it is still a bit of a nightmare for me.
I mean, it's great that those drop-in centers are there. As long as they're utilized by Métis folks themselves, students. It wasn't that long ago when I sat in a lot of those meetings and trying to encourage that more Métis programming inside their drop-in centers is very vital, because a lot of our Métis students don't, really go into those places if they think it's a First Nations gathering spot. So they'll just continue to walk by. So, they've created a lot of efforts around, how they're going to adjust to the Métis aspect of those drop-in centers, right? And I think it's important.
Well, and it shows that there's that our students are starting to connect. And again, we have this conversation a lot. It doesn't matter who the individual are who comes on, and then they will often say, yeah, for the longest time, I sort of hid the conversation, felt it was better. Well, now, though the pendulum is swinging very quickly when it comes to just say everything about yourself, write everything about yourself online, hide nothing. Well, maybe there's a space there where we could suggest we get our own allowance for who we are, but don't hide or never feel ashamed of sharing the fact or the connection with the Métis community. And here we find it's actually quite a strong one. And Rupert's Land, again, is doing a fantastic job of saying, folks, there were limitations historically of opportunities for education. Why not explore those? So I guess which might lead to one of my next questions. When it comes to the opportunity that Rupert's Land is providing, does it, in the case of you, Austin, were you taking advantage of it in the first few years, or is this something that has now been helping you? Because the program is as advanced, whereas it's not just your last year. Now it could be your first, second, third year, right? They're really encouraging. So where are you when it comes to sort of the support and the relationships in there? Because couldn't be more supportive.
Yeah, actually, I've been utilizing their support pretty much from the very start. I think I hadn't even started university yet, and I took a trip down to the downtown office and sat down with one of their advisors. She spent about an hour with me, and she walked through all the programs that are available that I could use and all the awards I could apply to, and really just helped me point me in the right direction in terms of finding funding and not having to worry about financials while in post-secondary. So just absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, I think being able to not have to worry about the financials during post-secondary is really that's such a huge support in and of itself, right?
And I don't necessarily think that it was funny in this last little while. There was an opportunity and because again, we connect, Lawrence and I connect within this community quite a bit, but there is a design a capote. I didn't even really know what a capote was, but I thought to myself, if I want to learn more, I'm going to throw my name into that hat. Now, I didn't design anything very traditional. It was more of a shawl that somebody had helped me and said, hey, let's work on this together, Ross, but you have to do the work. I had to do the work, but I also had to do the learning. Now, again, there are so many other programs out there. There's provincial programs that are running, but I think you guys are in one of the ones that is just fantastic. And when this occurs, and here, when Lawrence, when I started the Squeaky Wheel, there wasn't a lot of conversation happening. There wasn't a lot of opportunities for people to listen. Well, I'm hoping other students continue to listen to this and go, ding, I should be looking into this. And families saying we should be looking into this. So it's exciting that people listen to it, listen to us, share our positive message, and having you guys on here is just that. And you're the first two. So that's spectacular. And there's going to be more to come and understanding the journey, because though I like to tease Lawrence in the fact that if you put our education together and add it, it probably adds up to grade 11 or 12. And yet look at us. Here we are.
Yeah.
Well, I think Lawrence and I did a little better than that, but so, we're excited about it. But is there anything else regarding the journey that you guys have had when it comes to, your awareness that you guys would like to share? Is there something that, do you have a little bit of awareness when it comes to the connection with, again, the student center, anything you could, you'd want to share with students as they're working their way up, or how easy it is to talk to Rupert's Land?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'll touch back maybe about the Writing Symbols Lodge in the university, and I think Lauren said maybe. I think you mentioned, it might be a little bit intimidating as a Métis student to go there, because you might think of it as, First Nations kind of only. And it is intimidating. And, I do encourage students, Métis, First Nations, Inuit, whatever you may be, to reach out to those resources. And really, I've made a lot of great friendships at my 4 years at the University of Calgary through people I've met at the Writing Symbols Lodge. So I think it is very important for students to really step out of their comfort zone as a Métis student in post-secondary.
Yeah. And I certainly believe that because, we, a lot of our younger folks and the younger generation, I mean, for me, it's different because I grew up Métis, both my mother and father. I grew up in Métis housing. It was just always around me. But there's some people out there who are on their identity path that's just a little bit different. And we want to encourage them to come out. We want to make sure that open arm is there. And we sometimes we always, we don't wag a finger at anybody in those areas, but we always encourage them to have Métis programming specific because that's the real vital group that we need to get into those atmospheres, because that's when they'll be hoarded with culture, just thrown scholarships at and grant money and all those things that they may not know about.
Yeah, it's definitely intimidating not coming from a Métis background when, things maybe aren't labeled Métis, they're labeled Indigenous. So having that Métis kind of, I don't know, takes the guilt away, if that makes sense. And it allowed me to step into that space and say, okay, I can say I'm Métis, right? I can go to the Writing Symbols Lodge and it's a very welcome environment, a very friendly environment once you get in. But there's that kind of wall of, should I go in? That I think putting the word Métis on just makes it friendlier.
It's funny how that connection and that, when those agencies, extend that olive branch, that connection, saying, right, when your name is on there, that hey, we welcome all Indigenous students, but also, hey, there is an awareness. And I run into this a lot, especially with the world of academia, that you'll hear the land acknowledgement. And I don't necessarily go to challenge somebody, but I will often say, I'm just curious, here you did this land acknowledgement and you we do it before our show as well and such, but are you even familiar with the words that you're saying?
Yeah.
And often they're like, well, no, I'm just told to say this. Not a problem. There's so many things that I'm still trying to learn and get a better handle on when it comes to, but in this last few weeks, we've had a strong conversation, Lawrence and I, about what are called, it's a fair, unfair, it's relative term called new Métis. And it's not just about initial identity. It's what role you take within the agencies or within the community. I'm the first person to say, folks, I'm willing to stand up and be proud and make a conversation, but understand I don't know everything. So I shouldn't try to make a lot of decisions, but I want to be a part of the conversation. And I'm willing to ask people who are more knowledgeable, the elders, hey, what is our relationship with the earth when it comes to, industry and or water, and what's our relationship with First Nations? So though a lot of people will say, I'm new to this journey, well, we're not really new Métis. We've been Métis ever since I've known, right? Ever since I finally learned this, but I'm happy to be here. And when you share this conversation with youth and when our youth hear this is great. Now, Austin, mechanical engineer, as we sort of close out the part here of keeping you guys too long away from what probably should be 8 more hours of studying today, what's the end goal? Where do you want to take this? Where do you see yourself? And is there a way Lawrence and I can make money off you in the end?
Honestly, it's a question that, I really don't know the answer to. I went into engineering because as a kid, I like to take things apart, put them back together, do all that sort of thing. In high school, I really enjoyed math and science, and, being able to pursue that at the next level was something I enjoyed. And, I've done a few work terms in industry. And, I'm really not too sure what I want to do. I do know that I want to graduate, and I obviously want to work towards getting my professional designation as an engineer within Alberta and Canada. But I've been doing a lot of thinking, and there's so many opportunities now for graduate school. And I was looking at the Rupert's Land website as well, and they also provide funding for graduate programs as well. So that's just another incentive to, take it even higher to the next level after I finish my degree program.
And it's unique. You're lucky as students now. A lot of the people that we've talked to, again, we had this conversation a little bit already today, but the biggest leaders in our province and the biggest industry folks who now say, I'm Métis. You guys are, having this opportunity, hopefully the advantage, some awareness. Yeah, take it as far as you can, as far as you're comfortable with. Education is never a bad thing. Grace, how about yourself? Where does anthropology end?
It's a big question. I think I would like to do something on a more community level. I'm not 100% sure yet what that will look like. I know I actually went in grade 11 or 12 in our high school. There was a conference in Edmonton hosted by the Rupert's Land Institute about script. And so it was just an educational conference about that. And I got to meet a lot of academics who were anthropologists and working, to educate about the past and then using that to move us forward in the present. And that was really inspiring. So maybe not that exactly, but, it just gave me a vision for, I could do that. I could,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Métis Nation Accord that we assigned in April 2017 with the M&A, and I'm not sure if you're aware, has a very distinct element about addressing Métis script with Canada.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I know we're going to be going on to more script symposiums once we're out of this pandy situation, but eventually we're all going to sit and meet all the academics in Calgary. So you definitely have an invite to go there. But to discuss what we're going to be talking to Canada about when we move into areas like self-government talks and constitution and all those things, and how do we readdress that script policy system and what it did to Métis people in Canada. But so that's a big, heavy topic, and the more expertise that we have available to us in the future, the better.
And thank you both for sharing your story. Again, how we're connecting and you're already now leading the next youth into these opportunities. And it's exciting for us to get to watch this. I was a professional registered nurse before I became a professional firefighter. Lawrence was a professional dancer. There's different paths. Half the time I had no idea when I was younger, had any idea what it is that I wanted to do. And our listeners have heard our journey, our stories. But now we get to share others. It's like bringing somebody new onto the sitcom, I guess. This is sort of what helps keep things interesting and generate some new ideas. But thank you both for sharing your time. Lawrence, maybe you could thank our guests on the way out.
Yes, thank you, Grace. The more that we have, like I said, educated anthropologists, the better. And of course, Austin and you guys both have beautiful Métis last names, and I enjoy seeing that on my screen when I'm speaking to our people. And I want to thank you for being here today, and I wish you all the best in your future.
Thank you so much.
Best wishes to you both. Lawrence, the brightest and the nicest. Two of, I think was it 12 Rupert's Land students that we may end up talking to? Boy, fantastic. I guarantee, I'm thinking that of all the people that we're going to bring on, none of them are even on the same journey or pathway when it comes to the education, right? That's the beauty of U of C. That's the beauty of them, Rupert's Land sponsoring 17 different institutions. Boy, the Métis students, I think, are primed right now. I just hope more of them see this and take advantage of the opportunity, get into school. And at any age, right? There's all sorts of people that I've talked to that are older than you. You're older. Then just a little younger than me. They're probably somewhere in the middle. But such a great opportunity, and education is never a bad thing. education should never stop. We should always be learning and always creating. But two people down great paths.
Yes, for sure. And I encourage them to access all of our programs. And then also, we're looking at, there's only a few schools left in Alberta that we don't cover Métis Scholar Awards. So, we've done an incredible job, I think, as a Métis Nation to support our students here in Alberta. And a lot of that is thankful to Audrey for being here for so many years to really form this whole group itself, right? So, I appreciate the efforts on all the past leaders.
Well, and when Rupert's Land decides to, support students who take the Squeaky Wheel education tour, I don't know what will probably be $50,000 a year to study under Ross and Lawrence. That'll be my recommendation to Rupert's Land. Or you're on the board, Lawrence. Yeah. How about an hour with Ross for $10,000? Just throw it in there when you get your next chance at the board meeting. Yeah.
However, we support our students, but you're not a student, so.
Oh, that's a good point. But I'm hoping that they take the time. So let's see. We've talked a little bit about artificial intelligence today. We've had our chance to meet our students. Of course, always talked about the vaccine, but as we have to share that conversation, I think it's incredibly important. We talked a little bit about the Stampede. And again, I think we hit a lot of the key highlights of Rupert's Land and their successful organization and the relationships and the strength of their board and the fact that they're also, providing us the opportunity to speak with their students. And thank you again to Austin and Grace for joining our conversation here on the Squeaky Wheel. So, folks, I highly encourage you, if you have any questions about students, make sure you go to, I think I made a note of it. It's rupertsland.org, www. Always jump onto our website, www.métis3.org. Thank you for the emails. Thank you for the kind support that you provide when it comes to your messages. Continue to email us at tsw@métis3.org. Always ask questions of Lawrence and I. We're happy to share the conversation. Lawrence, close us out.
Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in again this week, and hit subscribe and share as much as you can. We look forward to the future and more announcements and more good stuff coming from Squeaky Wheel.
Folks, keep the wheel squeaking, and we look forward to seeing you next week.